In 2019, YouTube was caught violating the Child Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPPA. Since settling, YouTube has enacted new policies that are meant to serve as a smokescreen so they can dodge responsibility and scapegoat creators. As such, for my own protection, it is my obligation to advise you that this video is not aimed at children. My target audience is not children. Parental discretion is advised. Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. Our look at Dark Shadows, the Quentin Collins collection, continues with The Creeping Fog, released in June of 2011, written by Simon Gurrier, directed by Darren Gross. The Creeping Fog stars David Selby and Matthew Waterhouse. As always, I will be talking spoilers, so in the description box below, you will find the link to Big Finish's website, where you can buy Dark Shadows, The Creeping Fog, or you can get it as part of the Quentin Collins Collection digital bundle. And right off the bat, The Creeping Fog's biggest problem is that it is so slow. The pacing, it moves at a snail's pace. It is such a dull story. But there's good ideas here. There's great performances here. But yeah, no, it takes forever to get going. The first act is the worst. The second act is a little bit better, but the third act is the best. It's where because the plot has to resolve, and it's where things move the fastest. But there's also kind of a shift here. Having not listened to all of the dramatized readings, I don't know where it started, but when the dramatized readings started, they were very similar in format to the Companion Chronicles from Doctor Who. It featured a cast of two people, and one of the characters was recounting a story of some sort, and they were either recounting it to the second character, or the second character was in the story. Here, that has started to shift a little bit. There is a glare on my drafting table, and it is really annoying. Anyway, so yeah, there was a shift in the Dark Shadows dramatized readings from that more audiobook type range to something more full cast, and The Creeping Fog is kind of where it starts. At least in the Quentin Collins collections. Like I said, I don't know where it started in all of the dramatized readings because I haven't heard all of them. So for here, instead of a story being recounted, it's told in the present day, and the events are actually happening. It's not a story being told. And as the dramatized readings will go on, and as we go through this set, they will become full cast as well. So this story is the second part of the World War II trilogy, and it pretty much picks up right where London's Burning left off. Quentin is in a pub, and he's sort of drowning his sorrows. He's still mourning Rosie's death, when he meets a man named John Cunningham, played by Matthew Waterhouse. And John Cunningham is obviously an ancestor of Andrew Cunningham, who was a character in Bloodlust. He was Amy's first husband, and he is Tom and Harry's father. And I just forgot where I'm going there. And actually, the fun little fact, this is how Big Finish convinced Matthew Waterhouse to come back. They asked him to do this audio. I think this one came first. And because he had such a fun time, they then asked him if he wanted to play Adric again. So that's how that happened, little bit of trivia. But Matthew Waterhouse is really good here. I don't think the writing helps him so well. Like, in the first two acts, they're trying to figure out how to approach his character. Because, spoilers, John Cunningham is the villain in this story. And, the story doesn't know whether it wants to bury the lead or really lean into hinting that he is ultimately the villain. And it kind of goes back and forth on it, and it's just tonal. No, not even tonally. It just feels like the story wasn't sure what it wanted to do with him. But I do like the backstory we get with him. His experience in World War I. As he constantly brings up, it was the waiting that was the worst part. And that's one of the strengths of these Dark Shadows audio dramas, is even though the main characters are interacting with what is essentially just a one-off character, the stories do a really good job of fleshing out that one-off character so that when whatever happens to them happens, it does elicit an emotional response, whether it's sorrow and sadness, they're the same thing. Whether it's sorrow, despair, elation, satisfaction, anger, the story fleshes out the character. The stories flesh out the characters enough that you get the desired that they get the desired response. So, after meeting John in this pub, Quentin decides to leave and he is attacked in the fog. John finds him and brings him back to the museum where he works. And I think part of the problem with the pacing of this story is some of the sequences here, because the way they sort of start and then sort of taper off and aren't brought up again, it feels like padding. Like, what's a good example to talk about? So there's an entire sequence where, because there's another alarm signaling another blitz, Quentin and John have to sit in the museum in darkness. And they briefly light a candle. And, John thinks he sees a shadow. And, drops the candle and submerging them in darkness. And then, what he saw was just Quentin's shadow as he handed the candle over to him. It's a sequence that goes nowhere. And it's one of the many sequences that sort of pad this story. But there is some interesting things here. Like, the fog that I mentioned earlier, the creeping fog of the title, is alive. And it wants to feed on Quentin. And one of the ways it tries to do this is, in this museum, it tries to get Quentin to relive the memories of the artifacts. So, for example, one artifact is a fragment of skull. And the fog sends Quentin back to the past, and he sees through the eyes of the skull's owner that he was sacrificed in actually a very kind of brutal sequence, No, I feel like the sound design kind of lets these little flashbacks down a little bit, like you can't really put together what's happening until Quentin explains to John what it was he just saw. So, which I think is kind of a detriment of the sound design. But, yeah, and then, like I said, as the story progresses, the fog, every time it sends Quentin back, it continually ages him. So every time he comes back to the present, he's more and more aged, until finally, he's so old and weak, he gives up the will to fight, which is when John reveals that he cast the fog because he's trying to absorb people to protect the museum. He's very obsessed with history. At one point, he says World War II is a fight for their very history. And throughout the story, Quentin said that this is not his war. He doesn't want to fight, which is something John very clearly loathes. So he obviously takes great pleasure in this. And like I said, in this third act twist, the heel turn Matthew Waterhouse plays is glorious. He is obviously having so much fun doing this. Like, after this, it's no wonder he came back, because it's very clear he enjoyed this. And the ending is really good too. So after being absorbed, Quentin talks with all the dissonant voices making up the fog, and he's able to turn the fog against Andrew, because the fog believes, and the fog and the fog and John believe Quentin is a good man. And Quentin says, no, if you think I'm a good man, you don't know me at all. You don't know the monster hidden inside me, which, the fog believes is the werewolf, because Quentin is a werewolf. And he says, no, not the wolf, the man. And I love how basically Quentin convinces the fog to absorb John instead. It's really brutal, it's really chilling, it's really effective, and it's a great reminder that, even though Quentin realizes the mistakes of his past and he's trying to atone for what he's done, that man is still in there, and he will come out when he needs to. The Creeping Fog, like I said, is a passable story. It's got a lot of great ideas and some good performances. Unfortunately, it is also padded, featuring some unnecessary sequences and and it moves at a snail's pace. And for that, I'm going to give The Creeping Fog a 6 out of 10. But those are just my thoughts. Have you heard The Creeping Fog? What are yours? Start a conversation in the comments below. And join me next week. The World War II trilogy will conclude. Quentin will finally enter the fray, and in a world of vampires, werewolves, witches, and other monsters, Quentin will meet the worst evil to ever exist on the planet Earth. Next week, Quentin's fighting Nazis in Operation Victor. And what did you think? I started the spiel early, my mistake, so remember to like, comment, subscribe, click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload, share the video around, all of it helps my channel grow, and in the description box below you'll find the link to my Twitter where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and I'll see you guys next time.